There is a number that keeps showing up where it has no reason to be. Not 7, which appears so often across so many traditions that its strangeness has been worn smooth by repetition. Not 12, which carries the organizational logic of calendars and ancient systems that needed a number dividing cleanly into manageable parts. This number is different, specific enough to feel accidental, persistent enough to make accident feel like the wrong word. The number is 72. In one surviving strand of the Gospel of Luke, Jesus sends 72 people out ahead of him. 2b2, into every town he is about to visit. In other manuscripts of the same text, the number is 70. Scholars have been working on this question for centuries and have not resolved it. Both versions exist in the historical record. Both were copied carefully by people who believed they were preserving something true. The disagreement itself survived alongside both numbers, which is its own kind of fact about how seriously people took the difference. In the tradition of Jewish mysticism known as Kabbalah, there are 72 names of God, not titles or epithets or poetic descriptions, something more precise than any of those words suggests. They were drawn from 3 consecutive verses in the book of Exodus. Verses 19, 20, and 21 of chapter 14. Each of those 3 verses contains exactly 72 letters in the original Hebrew. The people who found this did not believe they were composing anything. They believed the names had always been there, folded inside the text, waiting for someone patient enough to find them. In the myth of Osiris, one of the oldest stories Egypt left behind, the god Set does not move against his brother alone. He has accomplices. According to the account preserved by the Greek writer Plutarch, the number of those accomplices is 72. Whether that number was always part of the story or entered it during the long centuries of retelling is something historians still discuss, but it is there in the record that survived, and in the slow turning of the Earth's axis through the sky, the drift that astronomers call precession. Modern calculations place the rate at roughly 1 degree every 72 years. Traditions of astrology and mysticism that developed in the medieval and early modern periods took particular notice of this figure. They found in it a rhythm that seemed to belong to a different order of time than human lives ordinarily touch. These are not the same tradition. They do not speak from the same religious world, carry the same history, or serve the same purpose. No single explanation connects all of them cleanly, but they have all, at different moments across different centuries, paused at this number. They have all found something in it worth marking. That is where tonight begins. One thing worth naming clearly, before the story goes any further. What you are going to hear is drawn from texts that are genuinely old and traditions that are genuinely alive. Some passages will imagine specific moments and specific presences. These are not reconstructions of events. They are not claims about what literally occurred. They are ways of feeling what the ancient texts are reaching toward. Ways of inhabiting what the people who made these names were trying to say. That distinction matters, and it is worth holding as you listen. Let the room carry a little more of your weight than it was a moment ago. Whatever the day asked of you, it is not asking anymore. The story is beginning. The 3 verses from Exodus are not famous verses. They do not contain commandments. They are not the kind of passage that gets quoted at the beginning of sermons or written in large letters above sanctuary doors. They sit quietly inside a larger story about escape and water and the specific terror of being pursued by something that will not stop. Verse 19. Verse 20. Verse 21 of chapter 14. 3 verses describing a crossing that should not have been possible, and in the original Hebrew, each one composed of exactly 72 letters. That fact was noticed, not immediately, not by a single person, but over the long centuries of people living inside these texts with a closeness that is difficult for most modern readers to fully imagine. People who read the same passages every day for years, who believed that every letter was there for a reason, that nothing in the arrangement of the words was accidental. that the surface meaning was only one layer of what the text was doing. Someone, at some point in that long history of close reading, looked at those 3 verses and saw not just meaning on the surface but structure underneath it, saw that the architecture of the words might itself be carrying something, saw that a passage describing an impossible crossing through water might contain its own hidden passage, something encoded in the shape of the language rather than in its stated content. The method that emerged from this observation is called Shemhamphorash. The name means something close to the explicit name or the divided name, though the translation shifts depending on the source. The process itself is precise in a way that feels almost mathematical. Take the 72 letters of the first verse and read them from left to right. Take the 72 letters of the second verse and read them from right to left. Take the 72 letters of the third verse and read them from left to right again. Stack the 3 rows on top of each other and read downward in columns of 3 letters each. Each column becomes the root of a name. Add the suffix el to some of them, a Hebrew word meaning God. Add ayah to others, carrying the same meaning in a different form. The result is 72 names. What is unusual about this? What separates it from other systems of sacred naming is that these names were not received from outside. They were not heard in a dream or carried by a messenger or spoken from something burning. They were calculated, derived, read out of a structure that was already present in the text, waiting in the arrangement of letters, the way a hidden image waits in a pattern. Invisible until you know how to look, and then impossible not to see. Stand with that for a moment, because it changes almost everything about what the names mean and why anyone across the centuries took them seriously. An invented name belongs to the person who invented it. It carries the weight of their creativity and their intention, and nothing beyond that. A name that is read out of a structure that was already there is a different kind of thing entirely. It is a discovery rather than a creation, and a discovery implies that the thing discovered existed before the finding, before anyone looked for it, before the language being used to read it had settled into the form it eventually took. There is a man sitting with these 3 verses by lamplight. The city outside has not yet been given its modern name. He has counted these letters many times before, arrived at this same number many times before. The method came to him from his teacher, who received it from a teacher before that, extending back along a chain he cannot trace to its beginning. He is not inventing anything tonight. He is reading in the way his tradition taught him to read, which is the way of a person who believes the text holds more than it shows on first encounter. He writes down the names as the columns produce them, each combination of 3 letters carrying within it a fragment of the passage that describes an impossible crossing. Each name, in this understanding, a fragment of the force that made the crossing possible. What he feels as he writes them down is not the feeling of someone who has made something. It is the feeling of someone who has found something that was always there. There is no triumph in it. There is only the quiet recognition that the text was deeper than its surface, that the depth was real, and that the finding changes nothing about what was there and everything about what is now known. That distinction between making and finding is the entire foundation of why the traditions built around these names treated them as more than poetry. Over time, and through a process of interpretation that accumulated across many generations and many different cultural contexts, each of the 72 names came to designate, in some later Kabbalistic and esoteric traditions, not just an attribute of God but a specific presence, a being whose nature was described completely and permanently by the name itself. Vahawa, Yeliel, Sitael, Elimia, 72 names, 72 beings. In this reading, each one understood as a particular face of the divine turned toward a specific domain of human experience. And this is where the question of 72 rather than 70 becomes something more than a counting dispute. 70 is a round number. It carries the feeling of completion. of a count that reaches a natural resting place and stops. 70 elders appear with Moses in certain passages. 70 nations are counted in some readings of the early chapters of Genesis. 70 has the quality of an answer. 72 does not feel chosen. It feels arrived at. The method produces what it produces. The verses have the letters they have. The columns yield what they yield. You cannot round Shemhamphorash to 70 without destroying the structure that makes the names mean what they mean in this tradition. The number is not selected. It is the output of a process constrained by a text that the traditions understood as given rather than composed. The specificity of 72 was itself, within the traditions that preserved these names, a form of evidence. If someone had simply chosen a number for the names of God, they would have chosen something rounder. The fact that the method produced exactly this number, not a convenient number, not a number with strong prior symbolic associations, but this particular and slightly awkward number, was taken by those traditions as confirmation that the structure was real. Most accounts of the 72 angels skip past this entirely. They go straight to the names and their attributes and never stop to explain what kind of thing the traditions believed they were working with. What internal logic made these names feel like knowledge rather than imagination? What the difference was in the minds of the people who carried this system across many centuries, between a name that was found and a name that was made. That difference is the ground everything else stands on tonight. Tonight, you are going to move through what those names were understood to mean. Not as a catalogue to be memorized, but as a landscape, a map of territories the traditions built around these names considered real. The map will go deep into some regions and move more quickly through others, the way any honest account of a large territory spends more time in the places that most require attention and passes through others in the quality of their presence rather than the precision of their description. Not every room in a large house requires the same length of account. What matters is that the house is real and that you are moving through it. All 72 are here tonight. Not all of them at the same depth, but all of them present. The way all the stars are present on a clear night, even when you are attending to only a few. You are already settling. The particular quality of attention that belongs to the night is already present in the room, different from the attention of the day. Less directed, more willing to let things arrive without immediately sorting them. 72 names. And the first question is not what they mean, but where they came from. Because where something comes from is part of what it is. The night is holding you. Let it. There is a woman lying awake in a city that has not yet been given its modern name. The century does not matter for this. What matters is the quality of the dark, which is the same dark that is around you now. What matters is what she is carrying into this night, which is the kind of heaviness that does not have a single source and cannot be resolved by addressing any one thing. She has been carrying it for long enough that she has stopped expecting it to lift. She lies still, and the dark holds her, and she has the feeling, arriving without her doing anything to produce it, that something in the dark is attending to her. Not the dark itself, something in it, something present at a level she has no name for. She does not know about the map, but in the imagination of the traditions that built it. The map was built for exactly the condition she is in. The traditions that developed around the 72 names had a very specific picture of how everything is arranged. Not a vague picture, not a poetic gesture toward mystery. A precise picture, worked out with the kind of care that the people who developed it usually reserved for legal reasoning and close textual interpretation. They brought the same rigor to the structure of the cosmos that they brought to the structure of a contract. Every level named, every relationship mapped, every layer of reality assigned its position and its function within the whole. The picture is called the Tree of Life. In Hebrew, Etz Chaim. It is not a tree that grows in soil. It is a diagram, a map of 10 centers, called Sephiroth, arranged in a specific pattern and connected by 22 pathways. Each center represents a different quality of existence, a different way that the divine expresses itself as it moves from pure, undifferentiated source toward the world of concrete, physical, tangible things. The highest of the 10 centers, called Kether, meaning crown, sits at the point closest to the source of everything, so close that it is barely distinguishable from the source itself. The lowest, called Malkuth, meaning kingdom, is the world you are lying in right now, the physical world, the world of bodies and breath and rooms and the specific weight of whatever is covering you. Between those 2 points are 8 others, 8 ways of being that exist between pure source and pure manifestation. There is a room somewhere in the medieval period, a city that has known many names, lamplight on a table, a man working on a commentary that will be copied into other manuscripts and travel forward in time in ways he cannot predict. He is not writing about the architecture of heaven the way a poet writes about beauty, from the outside, with admiration. He is working with the map the way a builder works with a blueprint. The map is functional to him. It describes something he believes is real about the structure of what exists. And his job is to understand that structure well enough to transmit it accurately to whoever comes after him. He places beings within the map the way a cartographer places towns along a road. Not because the placement is arbitrary, but because the placement corresponds to something real. Within the logic of this tradition, about the nature of the beings and the nature of the levels they inhabit. In some later Kabbalistic and esoteric systems, the cosmos is understood not just as 10 Sephiroth, but as 4 distinct worlds nested within each other. Each one a complete version of the tree of life, operating at a different level of density. The highest of these 4 worlds, called Atziluth, is the world of pure emanation. Below it is Beriah, the world of creation, where the first forms begin to take shape. Below that is Yetzirah, the world of formation, where those forms develop defined structures. And at the base is Asaya, the world of action, the world of physical reality. In a number of these systems, the domain where angelic beings of the kind associated with the 72 names primarily operate corresponds, in that symbolic geography, to the world of Yetzirah, the world of formation, the middle ground between pure idea and physical fact, the level where intention is taking shape but has not yet fully solidified into the fixed and resistant forms of material existence. This placement, within the symbolic logic of these systems, changes what an angel is compared to what angels tend to be in popular imagination. In popular imagination, angels are usually very high. Their closeness to God is their primary quality. When an angel appears in a story, it comes from above, and the distance it has traveled is part of what makes its arrival significant. In the Kabbalistic picture, the beings closest to the source are, within this symbolic logic, too different from human beings to make direct contact meaningful in ordinary terms. The gap between what they are and what a human being is would make direct encounter something other than communication. Proximity to the divine source and proximity to human experience are not the same thing. And the older map suggests that the beings most available to human beings in the actual circumstances of human lives are not necessarily the highest ones. The 72, in some of these frameworks, occupy a level that is not the highest, but is the most fitted for contact with what human experience actually is. In the symbolic imagination of these traditions, they are the presences whose nature allows them to operate at the level where human experience actually happens. In the world of formation, in the space where what you are feeling is still becoming what you will choose, not watching from a great altitude, present at the level of reality where thought becomes feeling, where feeling becomes intention, where intention begins to move toward the shape of a life. The woman lying awake in the unnamed city does not know any of this. She only knows what she feels, and what she feels, arriving without her arranging it, is the particular quality of not being alone in the dark in the way she expected to be alone. Had she seen the map, it would have had a name for what was present with her. That is the thing about a map built by people who were paying careful attention to the territory. It describes things that exist, whether or not the person experiencing them knows the description. The map does not create the territory. The territory was always there. The map only says that someone noticed it and found it worth charting. There is something in this picture of the cosmos that is easy to miss if you move through it quickly. It is not a hierarchy of importance arranged vertically, with the most significant beings at the top and the least significant at the bottom. It is a map of function. Different levels are suited to different kinds of work, and the work of accompanying a specific person through a specific night, in a specific room, carrying specific things that the day left behind, is not lesser work because of its specificity. In the symbolic world of these traditions, it may be precisely the most important kind of work, because it is the work that happens closest to where a human life is actually being lived. That is the architecture. 10 centers, 4 worlds, 72 presences. In this symbolic geography, operating at the level where you actually live, the night outside is the same night that has always been outside. The room you are in is the same kind of room that people in every century have lain in at this hour. Tired and sometimes troubled and sometimes at peace and often both at once. The traditions that built this map built it for people in exactly this condition. Not for scholars in the morning, for people in the dark, in the middle of what dark hours actually hold. Let the architecture rest around you without requiring anything from you. A map does not need to be actively studied to be useful. Sometimes just knowing the map exists, just knowing that the territory you are in has been charted by people who were paying close attention, is enough to make the territory feel less like being lost and more like being somewhere that someone took the trouble to understand. You are somewhere. The map knows where. Say the name Fahawa. Not out loud if you do not want to. Just let it move through your mind the way a name does when you encounter it for the first time in a language you do not speak. Notice what it does not feel like. It does not feel like Thomas. It does not feel like Sarah or Michael or any name that carries the weight of every person who has ever worn it. Every face you have ever associated with those sounds, it feels like something else, like a word from a language you almost recognize, like something that was a description before it became a label. That feeling points towards something real about what these names are. Vehuia. The name comes from a specific 3-letter root drawn from the Shemhamphorash process, with the suffix added. Scholars and practitioners within the traditions built around these names have interpreted its meaning as something close to God is the first and highest will. In this reading, Vehuia is not a title given to an entity that already existed under some other name. It is a description of a function, of a quality, of a specific way that something operates at the level of formation, before intention becomes action, before potential becomes actual, not a being who happens to be associated with will, the angelic form of a specific quality of will. In the understanding of this symbolic world, the name and the function are not two separate things connected by an assignment. They are the same thing expressed in 2 different registers. This is how most of the 72 names work. In the traditions that developed around them, each name is a compound of a 3-letter root drawn from those verses of Exodus and a divine suffix. Each compound describes, according to those interpretive traditions, a specific quality of the divine as it moves through the levels of the created world toward human experience. The names are not labels in this reading. They are specifications. They describe what each being does at the most fundamental level of its nature. the level that does not change across time or circumstance. There is a way that modern culture thinks about names that makes this genuinely difficult to absorb. In the world most people in the West were raised in, a name is something you receive before you are anyone in particular. It is given to you by other people based on what sounds good to them, or what honors someone they loved, or what was common in the time and place you were born. You carry that name through everything that happens to you. You change in ways that sometimes feel total. The name stays the same. The name and the person wearing it have, over the course of a life, very little necessary connection. A person named Grace is not necessarily graceful. A person named Victor does not necessarily win. The name describes nothing essential about what the person is. It is a handle, useful and arbitrary in equal measure, in the symbolic system that produced the 72 names. This way of thinking about naming would be deeply foreign. In that system, a name is not a handle. A name is an account of what something is at its deepest level. To name something correctly, in this older reading, is not to label it. It is to describe its nature so completely that the name and the thing named become, in a certain sense, the same thing approached from two different directions. There is a woman sitting in a garden in the evening. She is a practical person. She does not spend much time thinking about mystical traditions. She has come outside because the house felt too close and the evening is warm. She is thinking about someone she loves, turning the person over in her mind, the way you turn something over when you are trying to understand it fully. She is trying to find the right word for what this person is to her, not what they mean, what they are. She keeps reaching for words that feel too small. That name the function without naming the nature. She will not find the word tonight. Language, in the ordinary sense, does not have it. But the older map does. The 72 names, in the symbolic world of these traditions, are names in that second sense. Each one describes completely and permanently what the being named actually is. Not what it does in this situation or that one. What it is, at the level that does not change. Which means that when you hear one of these names tonight, you are not being introduced to a personality. You are being shown a function, a specific quality that exists. In this symbolic map, at the level of formation, a specific face of what the traditions understood as a vast and continuous field of divine presence, turned toward a specific aspect of human experience. There is something worth knowing about the way these names move through the night. Not every name will arrive with the same weight for every listener. Some will pass through like light through a window that is not facing you. Others will arrive with the specific quality of recognition, the feeling of landing in a place you have been before, even though you are hearing the name for the first time. Pay attention to those. The recognition is yours. The name is simply what the older map called the place where you are standing. The traditions organize these 72 names in some systems according to the cycle of the zodiac and the Hebrew calendar, each group corresponding to a window of time within the year. But more important than any calendar for tonight is the understanding that the names correspond to qualities of experience that are available to any person at any time. The zodiacal arrangement in some systems is one way of mapping when each quality is most overhead. Tonight is not about calendars. It is about which quality of the territory you are currently standing in. The names were built for exactly this kind of night. Not because anything is being promised, because they describe territories of human experience that are genuinely there, genuinely present, and genuinely recognizable to anyone who has lived long enough to have moved through them. Your body knows, without being told, that the time for bright and effortful attention is passing. The quality of attention the night requires is softer than that, more receptive, more willing to let things arrive rather than going out to meet them. Let the names come. They have been carried forward across many centuries specifically so that someone in a room like yours, at an hour like this one, would have something worth listening to in the dark. Before anything begins, there is a moment that belongs to no category. Not the thing itself yet, not the decision, not the action, not the shape of what is about to become real, but not absence either. Something is gathering before it knows what it is gathering for. The charge in the air of a room before the first word of a conversation that is going to change something. The stillness of a person standing at a door they have not yet decided to open. The particular quality of a held breath that is different from not breathing. This is the territory of the first 8 names. Not the action, the moment before the action, the impulse that precedes the decision, the place where something new is forming itself before it has taken on the weight and permanence of the actual. For higher is first. You have heard this name already. In the interpretive traditions built around Shemhamphorash, Vehuaya points toward the capacity to begin, not the capacity to plan or to imagine all the ways a beginning might go wrong. The raw capacity to convert possibility into actuality, to tip the balance from not yet to now. Most people who have ever stood at the edge of something necessary and felt the specific paralysis of not being able to make the first movement have been in the territory this name points to. The older map does not describe this as weakness. It describes it as the nature of beginnings. The first movement is always the most costly because it is the one that makes something permanent that was previously only possible. Jeliel follows, and it is the gentlest name in the first group. Jeliel points toward, in this interpretive reading, the quality of discovering that you are not alone in what you have initiated. The moment after the first movement when something responds, when the world turns toward what you have started rather than away from it. There is a woman in this territory tonight. She has been carrying something alone for longer than she would have chosen. Not from pride exactly. More from the specific kind of exhaustion that makes asking for help feel like one more thing that requires energy she does not have. She begins something small. One movement she had been withholding for weeks, and something arrives in response that she did not arrange and did not expect. Not a solution, a presence, the quality of being accompanied in what she was doing alone. That is the territory Jeliel points toward. Not the dramatic arrival of assistance from outside. The discovery that the movement you made was not made into empty space. Sitael, one word, and then a pause. Sitael means God is the hope of all creatures in this tradition. And what it points toward, in this reading, is very specific. Not hope in the aspirational sense. The specific quality of a person who has survived what should have ended them and is still, somehow, present. The particular quality of the morning after. The literal morning after the night you did not expect to outlast. Not the absence of damage. The presence of the person, despite the damage. If you have ever had a morning like that, you know this territory already. The name is simply what the older map called the place you were standing. Elamaya is fourth, and its placement here is the most counterintuitive thing in the first group. Elamaya means God is hidden. Why would the hiddenness of God belong among the angels of first impulse? Stand with it. There is a kind of beginning that cannot happen if all its consequences are visible in advance. If you could see the full cost of every choice before you made it, the nature of choice would change completely. What this name points to, in this reading, is not the uncertainty itself, but the capacity to act within it. To move forward not because you can see, but because the moment requires movement and you are present in the moment. Every significant beginning in a human life has happened in the condition this name describes. Not one of them was made with full knowledge of where it would lead. Mahasiya, Lilahil, Kahatel, 3 names, arriving quickly. Because each one is worth holding but not worth stopping for at the same length as what came before and what is coming after. Mahasiya points toward, in this reading, the capacity for course correction without catastrophe, the grace that keeps wrong turns from being final. Most wrong turns in a human life are not fatal. The gap between how final a wrong turn feels in the moment and how final it usually turns out to be is wider than fear would have you believe. Mahasaya is what the older map called the quality that keeps that gap open. Leela points toward generative radiance, the capacity of something to produce its own light rather than reflect someone else's. The capacity of human beings to add something to the world that was genuinely not there before. The radiance that arrives sometimes in tiredness, past the point where the effortful mind is still managing the process. When something that could not have been planned for suddenly appears in the work. Kahetel points toward the spontaneous recognition that existence itself is astonishing rather than ordinary. Not the performed appreciation of good things, the genuine perception, arriving without arrangement, that the bare fact of being here and being conscious of being here is extraordinary. This recognition arrives unpredictably, in the middle of unremarkable moments, and then passes. Kahetel is the name for the quality that makes those moments possible. 3 names, 3 qualities, 3 territories you have likely visited without knowing their names. And now, Achaya, which is the reason this group needs to be walked through slowly. Akaya means God is good and patient in this tradition. But what this name points toward, in this interpretive reading, is not patience in the sense most people mean when they use the word. Most people, when they hear patience, think of waiting, of enduring delay, of the suppression of impatience until something slow resolves itself. Patience as the grinding out of time. Patience as the holding of breath until the situation finally changes. What this name points toward is entirely different from that. There is a man sitting in a room at a late hour. He has been sitting with a question for years, not a question that arrived recently, a question that has been present in his life since before he had language to articulate it clearly, a question about why certain things happen to certain people, about the structure of meaning in a world that does not always appear to have one. He has read extensively. He has talked with people who know more than he does. He has followed every thread he could find, and he is no closer to an answer than he was when he started. What is unusual about this man is not the question. Many people have the same question. What is unusual is what he has done with the absence of an answer. He has not decided the question is not real and found a way to explain it away. He has not decided the question is threatening and stopped looking at it. He is still sitting with it, still genuinely curious, still interested in something that has no bottom and has given him no indication that it ever will. This quality, the capacity to remain in genuine and curious relationship with something that will not resolve, is what this name points toward in this reading. Not the patience that waits for things to change, the patience that has stopped requiring things to change as the condition for remaining present with them. This is rarer than it sounds. If you are the kind of person who lies awake with questions that do not resolve, who turns things over in the dark, not because you believe you will reach a conclusion, but because you cannot stop, you know this territory already. The older map has a name for the place where you have been standing. It has always had a name for it. The 8 names of this first group are 8 aspects of the same underlying territory. The territory of beginning, of the moment, before the moment, of the gathering force that precedes every new thing. Vehuaya is the raw capacity to start. Jeliel is the discovery of accompaniment. Sitael is the presence that survives damage. Elamaya is the action taken in the absence of certainty. Mahasaya keeps wrong turns from being final. Lelahel is the radiance that generates rather than reflects. Kahetel is the recognition of the astonishing in the ordinary. Akaya is the capacity to remain with what will not resolve. 8 aspects, 8 faces of the same force, 8 territories you have already moved through, whether or not you had their names. Within the symbolic language of these traditions, the moments in your life when something gathered itself before you knew what it was gathering for, when the impulse arrived before the reason, When the morning came after the night, you were not sure you would outlast. Those moments were located somewhere on the map. Tonight you have the names for some of the places you have already been. The second group is waiting. Something in you has been letting go since the first name was spoken. Not a decision to let go. The kind of letting go that happens underneath the decisions. In the layer of the body that does not wait for permission. The room is a little further away than it was at the beginning. The night is more completely here. The names have done something to the air of the room that is difficult to name but is present. The map continues. There is a difference between something being absent and something being hidden. Absent means gone, means not here, means the search is for nothing, because the thing you are looking for does not exist in this territory. Hidden means something else entirely. Hidden means present, but not yet visible. Means the thing you are looking for is already in this room, in this life, in this particular arrangement of circumstances you are living inside right now. Hidden means the search is not about traveling somewhere else. It is about looking differently at where you already are. Most of the ways people have been taught to think about seeking, spiritual seeking especially, are structured around absence, around the idea that what you need is located somewhere you have not yet been, that the peace you are looking for is at a destination, that the clarity you want requires departure from your current condition and arrival at a different one, that what is missing from your life is missing because it has not yet arrived. The second group of 8 names points toward a different understanding entirely. Not the absent, the hidden, the present but not yet visible, the qualities and capacities that are already inside the territory you are living in, waiting for the particular quality of attention that makes them available. This distinction matters more than it might seem at first. Most people lying in the dark at the end of a difficult day assume that what they need is not here, that it will come later, after sleep, after time, after something changes. The older map says something different. It says, look again. What you need may already be here, not arriving, already present, waiting for the angle of attention that makes it visible. Haziel is the first name in this group. Haziel means something close to God is my vision, or God sees in this tradition. The governing quality in this interpretive reading is mercy in a specific sense that differs substantially from its most common uses. In most contexts, mercy means the withholding of punishment that was deserved. Mercy as restraint. Mercy as the decision by someone with power to not do what they had the right to do. What this name points toward, in the symbolic world of these traditions, is mercy in a more ancient sense, closer to the Hebrew word hesed, which carries within it the qualities of loving kindness and steadfast generosity. The decision to remain in relationship with something even when the relationship has become costly. A mercy that does not require a reason, that does not calculate what was deserved and then choose to give less than that. That proceeds from the nature of the one who gives rather than from the qualities of the one who receives. Most people have encountered this kind of mercy at some point, have been forgiven not because they earned forgiveness but because someone chose to keep the relationship alive at their own expense, have been given something they had no claim on because the person giving it chose generosity over accounting. What this name points toward as hidden, mercy is already present in the architecture of the situation you are in, not as a reward you have earned, as a quality of the ground itself. Aladia is second. Aladia means something like God is propitious in this tradition. The governing quality, in some interpretive accounts, involves the capacity of situations to remain open, the grace of time still available, the quality of circumstances that feel closed but are not. There is a particular quality of despair that comes from the feeling that a situation has permanently closed, that a relationship has reached its final form, that a chapter of life has ended in the wrong way and the ending is now fixed. What this name points to, within this symbolic world, is the hidden quality of situations that feel finished but retain motion. The fact that what looks like a wall from inside a specific moment often looks like a door from a slightly different angle or a slightly later time. This is not false optimism. The older map is not promising that everything resolves well. It is pointing at the specific quality of situations that remain alive. And the hidden thing is that more situations remain alive than they feel like they do from inside them. Lauvia holds the third position. Lauvia means God is worthy of praise in this tradition. The governing quality, in this interpretive reading, involves a form of triumph that most popular accounts of this name miss entirely. The triumph Lauvia points toward is not the triumph of defeating the difficult thing. It is the triumph of being genuinely changed by it. The victory that consists not of coming through the fire unchanged, but of coming through different, enlarged by the encounter with the thing that tried to diminish you, made more complete by the thing that tried to break you into pieces. There is a version of strength that the culture most people listening to this were raised in tends to celebrate. The version that consists of not being affected, of going through difficulty and emerging looking the same, of hardship leaving no visible mark. The symbolic world of Lauvia is describing a different version, the one where the mark is visible and the visibility of it is not weakness but evidence. Evidence of something that was tested and did not collapse. Hahaya is the fourth name. Hahaya means God is his refuge in this tradition. The governing quality, in some traditional accounts, connects to dreams and to the knowledge that arrives through the dreaming state. The capacity of the unconscious to hold and transmit what the waking mind cannot access. There is a man who has been trying to work through something for weeks, a situation that his waking mind has circled without finding a way through. He has brought it to this night, the way he has brought it to many nights. He does not expect anything different. He falls asleep, and something shifts in the dark. In the territory that this name describes within the symbolic world of these traditions, in the level of knowing that operates below the level that the managing and problem-solving mind has access to. He will not be aware of this. He will simply wake in the morning with something different in him, not a solution necessarily, a different relationship to the situation, a quality of loosening where there was tightness. The older map names the territory where that loosening happens. The night does work that the day does not know how to do. This name is what those traditions called the place where that work takes place. Ezalel is fifth. Ezalel means God is glorified over all things in this tradition. The governing quality, in this interpretive reading, is the faithfulness of a thing to its own nature. The way certain qualities in a person persist through experiences that should have erased them and do not. The way a particular way of seeing the world survives everything that has tried to replace it with a different way. Most people have something in them that has remained constant through everything that has changed around it. Some quality of what they find beautiful. Some instinctive response to suffering that has not been argued or educated away. Some way of being present in a room that belongs entirely to them and has never been successfully replaced by whoever they were trying to be at the time. What this name points toward. In the symbolic language of this tradition, what is essentially yours has been faithful to you even through the periods when you were not particularly faithful to it. The core of what you are has not been successfully replaced. It is still here. It was here before tonight, and it will be here after. Mebahel is the sixth name. Mebahel means God is the preserver of life in this tradition. The governing quality, in some interpretive accounts, involves the force that resists the permanent victory of the false, the structural observation that falsehood requires constant maintenance in a way that truth does not, that what is false has to be continually reasserted and redefended, while what is true simply waits. This is a quality that operates on timescales often too long for the person inside an unjust situation to find comfort in. The older map is not promising that justice will arrive quickly or visibly. It is pointing at a structural tendency, a bias in the nature of things toward what is true that is not destroyed by the periods in which untruth appears to be winning. The hidden thing this name points toward is this tendency. Its hiddenness is often the most painful thing about it, but hidden is not the same as absent. Hariel is seventh. Hariel means God is my creator in this tradition, the governing quality. In this interpretive reading is a particular form of simplification, not the dramatic removal of what is wrong, the gradual discovery that beneath what you have become in the course of living there is something simpler, something that has been there throughout all the changes, but was not visible under what grew over it. A woman has been maintaining a version of herself for years that she built in response to specific circumstances that have since changed. The version was useful when it was built. It protected something real. But the circumstances are different now, and the version has not updated, and she is tired in the specific way of someone maintaining a structure that is no longer doing what it was built for. She does not yet know this consciously. She only knows she is tired in a way that sleep does not seem to fully address. What Hariel points toward, within the symbolic world of these traditions, is the quiet process of simplification that begins when the unnecessary starts to loosen. Not through dramatic revelation, through the gradual accumulation of moments when the maintained version feels slightly less necessary than it did before. The hidden thing is the simpler self underneath. It has been there throughout. It is here tonight. And Hekamiah is the eighth and last name of this group. Hekamiah means something like God, who establishes the universe in this tradition. This name is genuinely difficult to carry into contemporary language, which is perhaps appropriate for a name that, within this symbolic world, points toward the most fundamental layer of the hidden. Within the interpretive traditions built around this name, it points toward the quality of constancy in the structure of things itself, the faithfulness of what holds existence together, the quality of things that remain the same so that other things can change. Most of what holds your life together tonight is invisible. The regularities you depend on, without knowing you depend on them. The structures that have not changed while other things have changed enormously. The qualities of existence that persist without requiring your attention or your awareness of them. The older map gives this name to what governs that persistence. The hidden thing it points toward is hidden in plain sight, present in every moment of your existence, fundamental to the possibility of everything that happens in a life, and almost never noticed, precisely because it never changes. The second group is complete. 8 names, 8 aspects of the territory of the hidden, 8 ways, the traditions located, what most people are searching for, not in destinations they have not yet reached, but in depths they have not yet accessed. Nothing in this group comes from outside. That is the quality all 8 names share. Haziel deepens mercy that is already in the structure. Aladiah keeps open what feels closed. Lauvia transforms what was endured into what changed you. Hahaya holds the knowledge the day cannot access. Iezalel preserves what is essentially yours. Mebahel maintains the tendency toward truth. Hariel simplifies what has become unnecessarily complex. Hekamiah holds the invisible architecture that makes all of it possible. Somewhere in those 8 directions, something in your life is hidden rather than absent. The night is the right time to know the difference. Your breath has found a slower rhythm than it had when you started. The room has taken on the quality that rooms take on when the person in them has been still for long enough. Something is settling that was held up by movement. Let it settle. The third group is waiting, and it is different from anything that has come before. Not every tradition that has tried to describe the structure of the sacred has been honest about this next part. Many of them skip it entirely. They give you the angels of protection and healing and love and abundance, and they arrange these qualities in a way that suggests the sacred is primarily in the business of making human experience more comfortable, more manageable, more aligned with what human beings already want for themselves when they lie down at night and quietly compile the list of what they are hoping for. The traditions built around the 72 names do not do this. They include, in their map of the divine, as it relates to human experience, a group of presences that do not govern comfort, that do not govern the arrival of good things or the removal of difficult ones, that govern instead the territory most people spend significant portions of their lives trying to avoid. And these traditions, with a seriousness that most popular accounts of angels do not match, considered this territory important enough to place inside the map rather than leaving it outside. This is one of the things that makes these traditions worth taking seriously. Not the names of light and healing and protection, though those are present in the map. The fact that the map also includes this, the territory this group governs, is not easy to name in a single phrase. It is the territory of confrontation, of inheritance that was not chosen, of things in a life that are true and difficult and have been true and difficult for long enough that they have begun to feel permanent, of the specific kind of pain that does not respond to reassurance because the pain is not a misunderstanding. The pain is an accurate response to something real. Within the symbolic world of these traditions, this territory is not a malfunction. It is a domain, a region of the map with its own geography and its own presences assigned to it. Not presences that cause the difficult thing to happen, presences that are present in it, that do not look away from what is hard in the way that most of us, most of the time, instinctively do. Luvaya is the first name that belongs here, and it requires careful attention. Luvia means something like God is generous to sinners in this tradition. The governing quality in this interpretive reading involves memory in a sense that most accounts of this name do not develop fully. Not the memory of pleasant things, not the faculty of recall in general, the specific quality of expanded memory, the capacity to hold the full account of something rather than the edited version. Most people carry a heavily edited version of their own past. The editing is not dishonest in the sense of deliberate falsification. It is the natural and necessary process by which the mind protects the self from the full weight of what the self has done and felt and failed to do. The edited version is lighter. The edited version is livable, but the full version is more workable. A person navigating by the edited version of their past is using a map that has had entire regions removed. They keep being surprised by patterns they cannot explain because the explanation is in the removed region. They keep arriving at places they did not intend to go because the route looks direct on the edited map and is not direct on the actual territory. The governing quality this name points toward, within this symbolic world, is the loosening of the editing, the moments when the fuller version becomes available, and, within this tradition, this is named as God's generosity to the penitent, not God's judgment of them. The expanded memory is not delivered as punishment. It is offered as material. The material a person needs in order to build something more complete than what they can build from the edited version. This is not comfortable. Nothing in this group is comfortable. That is not what this group is for. Pahalaya follows. Pahalaya means God who redeems in this tradition, the governing quality. In some interpretive accounts, is associated with liberation from what has become compulsive, from the behaviors and patterns a person enacts repeatedly, against their own understanding, against what they would choose if choice were operating cleanly. There is a man in this territory. He is not here because he is a failure. He is here because he is a person, which means he has something in him that has been stronger than his intention for long enough that he has mostly stopped believing his intention can change the situation. He has tried in all the ways available to him. He has tried with effort and reasoning and periods of genuine progress that did not hold. Within the symbolic language of this tradition, Pahalaya is not offering him another strategy. It is pointing to the level below strategy, the level below willpower and intention and conscious management, the level at which the pattern itself has its roots and which the approaches available to the managing mind do not reach. The liberation this name points toward is the kind that people who have experienced it describe as having happened to them rather than by them, as a shift at a level they did not have direct access to, as something that changed before they understood what had changed. The older map is not promising this will happen tonight. It is saying this territory exists, that the level below willpower is a real level, that it has been mapped. Nelkale holds the third position in this group, and it requires the most time. Nelkale means God is the only one in this tradition. The governing quality, in this interpretive reading, involves the dissolution of false structures, not the small misunderstandings that get corrected naturally in the course of living, the larger and more entrenched structures of belief that a person builds their life around without knowing they are beliefs, the things that feel like facts because they have been present so long and were formed so early that they precede the capacity to examine them. You do not examine the floor, you stand on it. The belief that you are the kind of person who does not deserve certain things was not formed through deliberate reasoning. It was absorbed in a specific household at a specific time, before the person absorbing it had any capacity to evaluate whether it was accurate. It became the floor, and you do not notice the floor because you are always standing on it. What this name points toward, within the symbolic world of these traditions, is the experience of discovering that the floor is not the floor, that what you have been standing on is a structure built by someone very young and working with very incomplete information. This discovery is disorienting. The traditions do not minimize the disorientation. They describe it as a domain, a territory that has its own form of necessity. There is a woman in this territory. She has been standing on a particular floor for as long as she can remember. The floor was built in a household that did not know it was building it. She has never questioned it, because you do not question what feels like ground. She is lying in the dark tonight with a feeling she cannot name, a feeling like something is slightly wrong with the angle at which everything is tilted, a feeling she has had before and pushed away. She is not going to solve this tonight. The territory this name describes does not work on that timetable, but something in the naming of it, something in the fact that the older map includes this place and gives it a name, is present in the room with her. Tomorrow the feeling will still be there. Eventually, she will stop pushing it away and start asking what it is pointing at. Within the symbolic language of this tradition, the feeling is a location, not a malfunction, a location on the map. Yael is fourth in this group. Yael means God's right hand in this tradition. The governing quality, in this interpretive reading, involves the alignment between what you are and what you appear to be. The slow movement toward a life in which the inside and the outside have less distance between them. Most people have spent considerable effort managing this distance, not from dishonesty, not entirely, but from the entirely understandable human tendency to present the parts of yourself that feel presentable and keep the others in reserve. Within the symbolic logic of this tradition, the territory Yael points toward is not exposure in the threatening sense. It is the movement toward alignment, toward the specific relief of a life in which you are not managing the distance between two versions of yourself. This relief does not arrive all at once. It arrives slowly, in small moments of allowing what is true to be visible without disaster following. Melahel is the fifth name in this group. Melahel means God who delivers from evil in this tradition. The governing quality, in this interpretive reading, involves healing through the acceptance of natural pace, the recognition that certain kinds of repair cannot be forced, that the attempt to force them produces something that looks like what was wanted and is not. A bone forced to bear weight before it is ready does not heal faster. It heals wrong. The forcing does not accelerate the process. It redirects it into a compromised form. The territory this name points toward is the territory of the bone that needs time, the grief that has its own duration and will not be compressed into the duration that others find more comfortable. The recovery from whatever you are recovering from that is following its own timeline, regardless of the timeline you would have preferred. Within the symbolic language of this tradition, the governing quality is not passive waiting. It is the active acceptance of pace. The decision to stop fighting the timeline and let the natural speed of repair operate without interference. Tonight is part of that timeline. The sleep you are moving toward is part of that timeline. Your body knows more about what you need than the part of you that monitors and manages, and it is going to do what it needs to do in the dark. In the hours when you are not supervising it, let it. Hawaya, close this group. Hawaya means something like God, who is truly good in this tradition. The governing quality, in some interpretive accounts, involves protection in exile, and the older map's account of this quality is the most specific and in some ways the most compassionate in the entire sixth group. This name points toward, in various traditional accounts, those who are away from home, not only physically away in the deeper sense of being in circumstances that do not recognize them, in situations that were not built for the version of them that actually exists, in environments, families, culture, sets of circumstances that do not have a good category for what they are. The specific experience of operating in a context that keeps asking you to be slightly different from what you are. Not out of malice, but out of the simple fact that the context was built for a different kind of person. This experience is more common than the people in it usually realize, because the condition of not fitting tends to feel isolating in a way that obscures how many people share it. The exile feels personal. It feels like evidence of something wrong with you, rather than a mismatch between what you are and what the available contexts were built for. Within the symbolic language of this tradition, Hawaya is not promising that the circumstances will change. It is pointing toward the quality of protection within the exile itself, the sustaining of what is essential about a person through the conditions that are, without necessarily meaning to, working to erode it. Being seen is not the same as being comforted. Nothing in this sixth group has comforted you. That was not the intention. The intention was to show you the part of the map that most accounts of the 72 leave out entirely, because leaving it out makes the map more comfortable and less accurate. And an inaccurate map, however comforting, is a map that will fail you at exactly the moment you most need it to hold. The traditions held this part of the map too, kept it, carried it forward through all the centuries of carrying, alongside the names of light and healing and protection. Because the people who built the map understood that a map of human experience containing only the good parts is not a map of human experience. It is a wish. Whatever you brought in tonight that belongs to this territory has been seen, not solved, not removed. Seen. The map includes it, in the dark, with certain kinds of weight. That may be exactly what is needed. Here is a question worth pausing on before the names begin. Why would a system built for contemplation and inner life and the quality of experience in its most private and nocturnal dimensions include what some traditional accounts describe using the language of battle and fortification and the holding of contested ground? The answer, within the symbolic world of these traditions, is not about external enemies. It is about something that happens inside a person when the structures that hold the self together are put under pressure. When the distinctions that make it possible to be a coherent entity moving through a shared world begin to blur. When the line between what is yours and what belongs to the surrounding world becomes difficult to locate. The word boundary carries a diminished meaning in contemporary usage. It has come to mean primarily a limit that a person sets to protect their comfort, a declared preference for how they want to be treated. In the world that produced these names, the boundary meant something older and more structural, the fact that one thing was not another thing, the membrane that allowed distinct entities to exist in proximity without collapsing into each other, the property of a thing that made it possible for that thing to be in genuine relationship with other things without losing the distinction that made the relationship real, without boundaries in this sense. Within the symbolic logic of these traditions, distinct existence is not possible, not because distinction is the highest value, but because certain forms of value require distinction to exist at all. Certain kinds of love are only possible between two things that remain two. Certain kinds of creativity require a self bounded enough to make choices. The names of this group point toward boundaries, not as walls that keep things out, but as membranes that allow things to remain themselves while remaining in relationship. Nithaya is first. Nithaya means God who gives wisdom in this tradition, the governing quality. In this, interpretive reading involves the capacity to know what you are, not as a fixed definition, as an orientation, as the thread that runs through everything that has happened to you and remains recognizable as yours, even through the circumstances that have tried to replace it. There is a young man who has gone to work in an environment that rewards a kind of person he is not entirely. He has been there long enough now that the adaptation is mostly unconscious. He performs the expected version well enough that most people around him cannot see the seam. But late at night, in the quality of tiredness that comes not from the work itself, but from the sustained effort of not quite being himself, he can feel the difference between who he is in that environment and who he is when no one is requiring him to be anyone in particular. The thread this name points toward is not defiance. It is not a decision he is making. It is simply the quality of having a center that survives context, of there being something in him that the context has not successfully replaced, despite the effort the context has been putting in. Haya follows. Haya means God who sees in secret in this tradition, the governing quality. In this, interpretive reading involves the capacity to hold competing truths simultaneously, to occupy the space between positions that want to resolve into each other, to maintain tension rather than rushing to eliminate it by choosing a side. There is a woman who has been in a painful situation with someone she loves for a long time. The situation is genuinely complicated. The person she loves has done things that hurt her. She has done things that hurt them. Both things are true, and neither truth cancels the other. She is tired of holding both, because holding both is harder than choosing one. But she knows that choosing one would require abandoning something real. The older map names the capacity to keep holding both, the membrane that maintains the space in which genuine complexity can exist without forcing a resolution that would simplify the situation at the cost of its truth. Yeratel, a single long pause. And then the name. Yeratel means God who tests in this tradition, the governing quality. In this interpretive reading, involves the maintenance of a position in genuine contact with what is challenging it, not stubbornness, which refuses to be moved even when movement is appropriate. The capacity to remain open to the argument against your position while not being moved by the pressure of the argument alone. The boundary this name points toward is the line between genuine revision and capitulation, between changing your mind because something showed you something true and changing your mind because the pressure to change became uncomfortable. These two things feel completely different from the inside. The older map gave them different names. Sahaya is fourth. Sahaya means God who heals in this tradition, the governing quality. In some interpretive accounts, involves the protection from a specific vulnerability, the background condition of a person who cannot fully inhabit the present good because they are already evacuating to the worst version of the future that fear can construct. There is a man who has received good news today, genuine good news. Something he has been hoping for a long time has arrived. He tells himself he is pleased, but something in him is already scanning for the catch, already waiting for the condition attached to it, already moving the good news into the category of temporary reprieve. The warmth of the good news has a very short half-life in him. It does not stay. The boundary this name points toward in this reading is the membrane between the present and the catastrophized future, not a guarantee that nothing will go wrong. The capacity to be actually present in what is actually here, to let a present good be experienced as a present good rather than as a loan that will soon be called in. Rael is fifth. Rael means God who hastens to help in this tradition. The governing quality, in this interpretive reading, involves liberation from what undermines the inner life from within, not external opponents, the habitual pessimism so old they feel like wisdom, the automatic responses to possibility that have been saying no for so long they no longer examine what they are saying no to. Omael, sixth name, brief. Omael means God patient and long-suffering in this tradition. The governing quality, in this reading, involves the boundary between what human will can accelerate and what human will cannot. The body has its own timeline. Relationships have their own timeline. Understanding has its own timeline. The older map suggests that this boundary is not a frustration to be overcome. It is a feature. A world entirely responsive to human will would be a world in which something essential was missing. Learning to live at this boundary, rather than perpetually fighting, it is one of the least celebrated and most significant forms of growth available to a person. Lekabel is seventh. Lekabel means God who inspires in this tradition. The governing quality, in this interpretive reading, involves the kind of intelligence that operates at the edge of the known, at the point where existing frameworks reach their limit and the situation continues beyond them. Every serious problem eventually reaches this point, the place where the tools that worked in familiar territory stop working, where the person trying to work through the problem must choose between forcing a solution from within the familiar framework, which produces something that looks like a solution and is not, and moving into unfamiliar territory, which requires leaving behind the certainty that familiar territory provides. The boundary Lekabel points toward, in this reading, is the edge of the known, not as a wall to stop at, but as a threshold to work at. And Vasaraya closes this group. Vasaraya means God who is just in this tradition. One sentence, then a pause. The governing quality, in this interpretive reading, is the most fundamental boundary in the group, the line between the account of events that protects the self and the account that simply describes what happened. The version of your history in which the choices of others explain everything about where you are, and the version in which you are a full participant in your own life, with agency and responsibility alongside whatever was done to you. A map shaped by what you needed it to say will keep delivering you to places you did not intend to go. Not because you are dishonest, because the map is wrong in ways that have consequences. The 8 names of this group are all, in different ways, about the nature and function of the line that makes distinct existence possible. Not the line that excludes, but the line that allows things to remain themselves while remaining in genuine relationship. Within the symbolic world of these traditions, the boundary is not the opposite of openness. It is what makes genuine openness possible, because you can only truly open what has the capacity to remain itself after opening. Something in the room has changed since the 6th group. The quality of the dark has shifted in a way that is difficult to name, but is present. The night is more completely here than it was when the 7th group began. The next territory is warmer. It has been waiting for you since the beginning of all of this. There is a difference between fixing something and healing it. Fixing is fast when it works. You identify the broken part. You replace it or reconnect it, or return it to the position it was in before the damage. The thing is restored to its prior state. The process has a clear endpoint, and the endpoint looks like what was there before. Healing does not work this way. Healing is the process by which something that has been damaged becomes different rather than the same as before. Not worse. Different. A bone that heals is not identical to the bone before the fracture. It develops new density at the site of repair, a place where the body responded to the break by building something that did not exist in the original structure. The healed thing carries the evidence of what happened to it. It is not the prior thing restored. It is a new thing that includes the history of the damage as part of what it is. This distinction between fixing and healing is one of the things the traditions built around the 72 names understood and built into the map. The group of names you are moving into now points towards slow repair, not the fast correction that returns things to a prior state. The patient process that produces something new, the kind of repair that takes the time it takes, that cannot be compressed without damage. That requires the person in the middle of it to tolerate a sustained period of being in process, neither broken nor whole, moving. The traditions devoted more of the map to this territory than to almost any other single domain. More names, more depth, more attention. That allocation is itself a statement about what the people who built this map believed was most central to the experience of being human. Not achievement, not illumination, not the arrival at states of elevated consciousness. The long, ordinary work of putting things back together. Ehuaya is first in this group. Ehaya means God who knows all things in this tradition. The governing quality, in some interpretive accounts, involves the discovery that something you were relying on had a different nature than you believed. That the support you thought was there was not there in the form you assumed. This is painful. The traditions that built the map around this name do not minimize the pain, but they notice something about this kind of pain that is worth naming. The discovery, however painful, is more workable than the continued not knowing. A person who knows the support is not there can begin to build something that actually holds. A person who does not know continues to lean and continues to fall and continues to be surprised by the falling. Within the symbolic language of these traditions, this name points toward the moment of discovery. The moment that feels from the inside like betrayal and looks from a longer perspective like the first day of structural honesty. The first day it became possible to build something real because something false had finally stopped disguising itself as real. Lehaya is second. Lehahaya means God who is clement in this tradition. The governing quality, in this interpretive reading, involves the transformation of anger, not the suppression of anger, the metabolization of it, the slow conversion of the heat of what was violated into something more directed. Anger that has not undergone this transformation is carried as weight. It uses energy without producing anything. It keeps the person in contact with the original injury in a way that re-injures rather than processes. It is real pain responding to real violation. It deserves to be taken seriously, and the form it needs to be taken seriously in, within the older map, is the form that allows it to move rather than the form that keeps it fixed. The healing this name points toward is not the instruction to let go. The traditions are not making that demand. They are pointing at the process by which the energy that was locked in the original wound becomes available for something other than the continuation of its own pain. Kavakia is third. Kavakia means God who gives joy in this tradition. The governing quality, in this interpretive reading, involves the movement between two different relationships to the past. A past you are still living inside is a past that continues to determine the present. The argument still being conducted in your head with the person who hurt you, conducted with the urgency of someone still in the room with that person. The decision still being defended to judges who stopped watching years ago. These are not memories. They are the present wearing the clothing of the past. A past you carry is different. It is present. It informs who you are. It is genuinely part of you, but it exists alongside other things. It does not fill the entire frame. The movement between these two conditions, within the symbolic language of this tradition, is what this name points toward. Not the decision to feel differently, not forgiveness on a particular timeline, the gradual shift from inside to carrying, from the past as the present to the past as part of the present. The older map does not give a timeline for this movement. It only maps the territory between the two conditions and names the quality of what makes the movement possible. Manahel is fourth. Manahel means God who nourishes all things in this tradition. The governing quality. In this interpretive reading, is receiving, not giving, not producing, not achieving or managing, receiving. There is a woman who has been caregiving for most of her adult life, not always professionally, but as the orientation of her attention. The attention has been outward for so long that inward has come to feel selfish. She lies down at night, and instead of resting, she reviews what she did not finish. She plans what tomorrow requires. She gives even in the dark, to the imaginary recipients of her unceasing attention, to the versions of needs that do not actually require her attention at this hour. The older map points toward the quality that would allow her to stop, not permanently, not forever, for tonight. The quality of allowing herself to be nourished by the simple fact of the room holding her, the dark holding her, the night offering something that does not require her to be useful in order to receive it. What you are doing right now is in the territory this name describes. Lying still, not producing anything, not managing anything, allowing something to arrive rather than going out to meet it. Within the symbolic world of these traditions, this is the practice of receiving. A person who can only give cannot be replenished. A person who cannot be replenished will eventually have nothing left to give. The night is giving something to you right now. Let it. Ail is the fifth name in this group. Ail means God, who is my delight in this tradition. The governing quality, in this interpretive reading, involves the capacity for genuine delight, not the performance of enthusiasm, the capacity of a consciousness to be genuinely surprised by beauty, to be moved by something without having arranged in advance to be moved by it. One of the things that long difficulty does to a person is gradually reduce this capacity, not through a single event but through the accumulation of openings that led to pain. The specific learning that the world is not as generous or as beautiful as you once allowed yourself to believe. The closing down of the expectation of being delighted as protection against the disappointment of expecting and not finding. The healing this name points toward, within this symbolic world, is the slow reopening of what was closed for understandable reasons, not the return to naivety, the return to permeability, the recovery of the capacity to be genuinely moved, which requires a kind of courage rarely celebrated, the courage to be open to something good again after having been open and been hurt by the opening. Habuhia is sixth. Habuhia means God, who gives liberally in this tradition. The governing quality, in this interpretive reading, involves the restoration of proportion, the return of a system pulled out of balance toward a state in which the different parts are again in appropriate relationship with each other. Your body is doing this right now without being asked. The systems that regulate temperature and chemistry and the rhythm of breathing are engaged in continuous adjustment, returning to balance, maintaining the conditions that make rest possible. This is not work you are doing. This is work being done in you. The healing this name points toward, within this symbolic world, is this same quality operating at the level of lived experience, the return of proportionality to a way of seeing that has been tilted too far in one direction. Rest is itself an act in the territory this name describes, the decision to stop driving the imbalance further, to lay down what was pushing in one direction and allow the natural return to begin. You made that decision when you lay down tonight. Rochelle is seventh. Rochelle means God who sees all things in this tradition. The governing quality, in some interpretive accounts, involves the restoration of what has been misplaced rather than lost. Not possessions, the more fundamental categories of what belongs to a person, the qualities that were present before the circumstances that made them dangerous to express. There is a man who grew up in circumstances that required him to be smaller than he was. Not dramatically, in the quiet, everyday way, that circumstances ask children to be smaller in order to make the surrounding situation more manageable. He learned to be smaller. He became very good at it. The circumstances changed long ago, but the smallness remained. Because habits of being do not update automatically when circumstances change. Within the symbolic language of this tradition, the parts of a person that went quiet under circumstances that required quiet are not lost. They are misplaced. The difference between lost and misplaced is everything. Lost means gone. Misplaced means waiting to be found. Waiting in a location that exists on the map, even when the person looking cannot yet see where on the map it is. Jebemiah closes this group. Jebemiah means God who produces all things from himself in this tradition. The governing quality in this interpretive reading involves the transmutation of experience, the specific process by which what was suffered becomes what was built upon, by which what was endured becomes part of the foundation of what comes next, by which the weight carried long enough and carefully enough and honestly enough begins, slowly, to change its nature from burden to material. This is not a quick process. The older map does not describe it as quick. The word transmutation was chosen deliberately in the esoteric literature associated with this name because transmutation requires sustained heat and real time and the willingness to observe something in the middle of being changed without forcing the result. You cannot make transmutation happen. You can only create and maintain the conditions in which it is possible and then allow the process to proceed. You are in those conditions right now. Not supervising anything, not managing anything, allowing the heat of the day to dissipate and the conditions of the night to do what the night does when given sufficient time and sufficient trust. 8 names, 8 aspects of the territory of slow repair. Iahuia removes what was falsely supporting you. Lihahaya transforms what is burning into something that can be directed. Kavakia moves you from inside the past to carrying it. Manahel opens you to receive what the night is offering. Ail restores the capacity to be genuinely moved. Habuhaya returns proportion to what was imbalanced. Roshul locates what was misplaced rather than lost. Jebemiah transmutes what was suffered into what can be built upon. 8 aspects of a process the body and the deeper layers of experience already know how to do. In the dark, without your supervision, without needing your permission. Your only task right now is not interfering, which you are already doing, which is already enough. The room is very still. The rhythm of your breathing belongs to the night now. Let the slow repair continue. You are in the right territory. You are already being held by what holds people in this territory. There is a quality to certain things that time does not reduce. Most things diminish. Urgency fades. Pain becomes less acute as it moves further from its source. The specific texture of joy softens from the sharp thing it was when it was new into something more integrated, more part of the background of a life rather than its foreground. Most of experience follows this pattern. The gradual softening, the gradual incorporation. But some things do not follow this pattern. There are memories that remain the same size, regardless of how much distance accumulates. There are losses that do not soften with time. Not because something is wrong with the person carrying them, but because the thing that was lost was genuinely large, and the size of the absence accurately reflects the size of what was there. There are moments of meaning that do not fade, but instead become more essential over time, more clearly part of what a person actually is, at the level below daily self. This is the territory of the 9th group, not what was beautiful and has been preserved, the territory of what has remained, regardless of preference, the territory of what did not diminish, even when diminishing would have been easier, the territory of what is still present in you tonight, from everything that has been present in your life up until tonight. This group speaks to a quality of experience that requires less explanation and more recognition. You already know this territory. The names here are not here to tell you something you do not know. They are here to tell you that what you know was known, that it was mapped, that someone long before you arrived at this particular night looked at the part of human experience where certain things simply do not go away and decided this was not a problem, requiring a solution, but a domain deserving a name. Some names in this group will be given the space they need. Others will arrive the way certain stars arrive on a clear night, as light rather than as detailed description, present and real without requiring extended account. Both kinds of arrival belong here. The territory of what remains does not always require the longest telling. Sometimes recognition arrives faster than explanation. Hayel is the first name that belongs here. Hayel means God who is master of the universe in this tradition. The governing quality in this interpretive reading involves the persistence of what is essential. The fact that certain things in a person do not yield to the forces applied to them, not because the person resisted with sufficient effort, because the things that did not yield were genuinely rooted at a level that the pressures applied to them could not reach. There is something in you that has remained constant through everything that has changed. Some quality of how you see the world that survived the experiences that should have replaced it with a different way of seeing. Some instinct toward beauty or justice or connection that has been present across every version of yourself you have inhabited. Within the symbolic language of this tradition, this persistence is not attributed to strength of character alone. It is described as the nature of what is genuinely yours, the quality of things rooted at the level that precedes choice, the things that remained not because you held them in place, but because they are what you are at the level below what happens to you. Michael moves through this group as light. In some traditional systems, Michael governs the quality of divine order as it relates to the structures of the natural and human world. In the territory of what remains, what this name points toward is simpler and more personal. The quality of appropriate structure, the sense of when something is in its right relationship with what surrounds it, the recognition, arriving sometimes after great disorder, that certain arrangements are more correct than others, and that this correctness is not arbitrary. Some people carry this recognition as what remains after everything that had the wrong structure has been dismantled or has fallen. Veolia passes through as presence rather than extended account. Veolia governs. In some traditional accounts, the quality of liberation from what oppresses. In the territory of what remains, what persists from this name's domain is the quality of having survived the oppressive thing and found that the survival is not the same as defeat, that certain things remain after the oppressive thing is gone, that the oppressive thing could not reach. Some people know exactly what those things are. They are what remain. Yelahia arrives briefly. Yelahia governs. In some traditional readings, the quality of courage and the capacity of those who fight for what is true. In the territory of what remains, what stays from this domain is the quality of having stood for something real at a cost. The specific kind of integrity that exists only in people who have been tested by having something they believed in opposed by something powerful, and who did not abandon what they believed in. This quality, in the people who carry it, is one of the things that does not diminish. Sehalaya is present in this group as quality rather than as extended description. In some traditional accounts, Sehalaya governs the quality of will directed toward what is truly important. What remains from this domain is the quality of a person who knows, at the level below argument, what actually matters to them, not what they have been told should matter. What actually does. This knowing is one of the things that persists after significant life experience has stripped away what was performed rather than real. Ariel passes through this group as light. Ariel governs. In some traditional readings, the quality of perception and the revealing of hidden things. What remains from this domain is the specific quality of attention that sees what is actually present rather than what was expected. The capacity that develops, sometimes slowly and sometimes through difficulty. to perceive the actual rather than the anticipated. This capacity, once developed, is not easily lost. Asalaya follows briefly. Asalia governs. In some traditional accounts, the quality of contemplation and the awareness of the deeper order of things. What remains from this domain is the quality of a person who has developed, through living, the capacity to hold unanswerable questions without requiring them to resolve. The tolerance for genuine mystery that develops in some people through the experience of having waited for answers that never arrived and finding that the waiting itself produced something valuable. Mihal moves through as presence. Mihail governs. In some traditional readings, the quality of love and faithfulness between people. What remains from this domain, in the territory of what persists, is the specific quality of connection that has lasted through circumstances that could have ended it and did not. The love that survived its own testing, the faithfulness that remained after the easier forms of it were no longer available. These things, when they remain, tend to be among the most durable things a person carries. Mumia is the last name in this group, and in some traditional arrangements, it is the last name of the entire 72. Mumia means God who is present at the conclusion in this tradition. The governing quality, in this interpretive reading, involves the completion of things, not the ending that comes from failure, not the conclusion reached because something was not strong enough to continue. The ending that comes from completion, from a thing having done what it was made to do, from an arc having reached its natural close. Most endings in a human life do not feel like completions when they happen. They feel like interruptions, like something that should have continued being stopped before it was finished. The traditions built around this name are not suggesting that this feeling is wrong. The feeling is real, but they are also pointing at something that coexists with that pain. The possibility that certain endings that feel from the inside like failures are, at a level not visible from inside the ending, completions, the relationship that came to its end, not because it was weak, but because it had carried both people as far as it was capable of carrying them. The chapter of life that closed not because you failed it, but because you finished it. The version of yourself you grew beyond. Within the symbolic language of this tradition, not all endings are completions, but some endings that feel like wounds are, in the longer account, a form of integrity. Between Hayael and Mumaya, between the persistence of what is essential and the completion of what has run its course, is the whole of the territory, the older map called What Remains. What remains in you is not only what you would have chosen to keep. Some of what persists is painful. Some of what does not diminish is grief. Some of what stays is the shape of an absence, the outline of something that was there and is no longer, which remains visible precisely because what was there was real and mattered, and the mattering has not ended simply because the thing itself is gone. Within the symbolic language of these traditions, what remains has been found worth keeping by something at a level below preference. The things which do not go away are the things that are genuinely yours, not only the comfortable parts, not only the parts you would have chosen, but the parts that are irreducibly, actually, yours. Tonight is becoming part of what remains, not the specific words, not the order in which things were said, but some quality of this hour, this specific quality of darkness and stillness and the slow settling of a person who came in carrying something and has been, without particularly trying, gradually setting it down. It will be there tomorrow, in some form, lighter than it is now, less articulate, but present, part of what you carry forward. Let what remains be what it is. Let what is finished be finished. You are held. There is still a little further to go. There is a place you pass through every night that you have never seen, not hidden from you in the way that things are hidden, when someone has decided you should not have access to them. Hidden in the way that things are hidden, when they belong to a different order of experience than the one your waking attention was built to perceive. The place exists. You move through it every night without exception. You simply do not carry the kind of awareness in that place that would allow you to observe yourself moving through it. Within the symbolic world of these traditions, this is called the threshold. Not sleep, not waking, the territory between them, the place where one kind of consciousness is releasing its hold and another kind has not yet established its own, where the structures that organize your waking experience, the continuous narrative of self, the maintenance of the distinction between inside and outside, the management of what you allow yourself to feel and remember and attend to, begin to loosen their grip, and where something else, something that does not translate well into the language built for waking experience, begins to become available. The names that govern this territory are the quietest in the entire 72. Their accounts in the traditions are shorter than the accounts of almost any other group, not from neglect, not because the people who built this map considered this territory less important, because they understood that certain territories resist the kind of description that longer accounts require, that the attempt to describe the threshold in the same terms used to describe other territories is itself a form of missing it. Precision, here, works against rather than toward understanding. What can be said is this: the threshold has a quality that is not the diminishment of waking and not the beginning of sleep. It is its own condition, an awareness that is softer than the waking state, less insistent on maintaining the particular shape the waking self requires, more willing to let the boundaries between things become permeable, an awareness that perceives differently, that knows differently, that is, at home in the dark in a way the daytime self never quite is. In this awareness, the things that felt urgent during the day lose some of their urgency, not because they have changed, because the quality of consciousness holding them has changed. The problems that demanded resolution a few hours ago are still present but differently present, more like weather than like commands, more like conditions to move through than like walls requiring immediate response. The names that govern this territory, within the symbolic language of these traditions, are not described as beings who do things to you as you cross. They are described as present, attending, watching in the original sense of the word that gave the watchers their name, not surveillance, presence, the quality of attention that does not require anything from the one being attended to. That does not leave when you stop being aware of it. That is not diminished by your inability to perceive it. In the language of this tradition, they were present at the threshold last night. They were present at every threshold you have crossed in your life. In the way that the older map understands presence at the threshold, they are present now, in the specific quality of this particular crossing, in the slight softening of the boundary between what is inside you and what is outside, in the way the room has become less defined at its edges, in the way sounds have taken on the quality of sounds heard from a certain distance rather than sounds that require your sorting and your response. You are close to the threshold now. Perhaps you have already crossed it without knowing. The threshold does not announce itself. It does not send a signal that the crossing is about to happen. It happens in the way that sleep itself happens, not through effort and not through decision, but through the gradual giving way of the held thing, the slow release of the tension that was keeping you on this side. Nothing is required of you here, not belief, not the right quality of mind. The threshold receives everyone who arrives at it. It received you last night and the night before and every night of your life going back to the first night, which you do not remember, in which something was present at the crossing that did not need you to be aware of it in order to be present. Let the room be as large as it is. Let the dark be as complete as it is. Let whatever sound is present be what it is. Not a problem to sort, not a thing requiring your attention. Just the particular texture of this night at this hour, in this specific place. In the language of this tradition, something is present at the crossing. In the language of this tradition, something has always been present at the crossing. You do not need to know its name to be held by what it holds. The threshold is here. You are already almost through it. Stay here for a moment, not fully awake, not asleep, in this particular quality of almost, this texture of the night, where the day has finished its claim on you, and sleep has not quite finished its arrival. There is one more thing worth hearing before the last descent begins. Not information, not analysis, something quieter than either of those. The traditions built around these names have something to say about exactly this moment. Not about angels in general, not about the 72 as a system, about this specific experience you are having right now. In this room, in this condition of being between one kind of consciousness and another, the people who built this map did not leave this moment without attention. They looked at it carefully, and what they said about it is not what most people who grew up in the modern world were ever told. In some streams of Jewish mystical thought, the hours of sleep were not understood as a gap in experience, not as the interruption of consciousness by unconsciousness, not as the daily suspension of the self. Sleep was understood, within these streams, as a different kind of presence, a different relationship to the layers of existence that waking life keeps mostly at a distance. The waking state, in this understanding, is not more real than the sleeping state. It is differently real, more bounded, more focused on the demands of the specific body in the specific circumstances of the specific day. The sleeping state is more open, less insistent on maintaining the particular shape that the waking self requires. In the symbolic imagination of some of these traditions, something of what a person is moves more freely through the deeper layers of experience during sleep, not through dramatic visions necessarily, though some traditions place emphasis on those, through the quieter work of integration and the kind of knowing that does not arrive as information but as a shift in what a person finds possible the following morning. This is why the night was taken seriously by the people who built these traditions, not as a threat to be survived, not as a vacancy to be optimized, as a genuine territory, with its own geography, its own forms of work. The 72 names you have moved through tonight, within the symbolic language of these traditions, are not presences available only during the waking hours. The night is, in this symbolic world, precisely the time when the level of existence these names point toward is most accessible, when the waking self releases its management of the boundary between what is inside and what is outside. Something becomes available that the defended daytime self keeps at a distance, not more vulnerable, more available. The distinction matters. Vulnerability implies danger. Availability implies contact. The night, in the older map, is not a time of exposure. It is a time of proximity. The hours in which the membrane between the human level and the level these names point toward becomes the most permeable it becomes in the ordinary course of a day. You are in those hours now. Some names tonight were spoken clearly, given the space they needed, the territory they governed described in detail. Some were passed through as regions, present in the quality of what surrounds them rather than in extended account. Some were held in the silence between the named territories, the way certain qualities of a landscape exist between the features that get marked on a map. All 72 were here in one of those forms. The map was complete even when the description was brief. A landscape is not less real because you move through part of it in the dark. The older map is not making a promise about what will happen in your sleep tonight. It is not claiming you will receive guidance or that something specific will change in the morning. It is saying something simpler and more foundational than any specific promise. It is saying that where you are going is not nowhere, that the night has geography, that the geography has been attended to, that the map includes the dark. A person who moves into sleep, believing they are moving into nothing, moves differently than a person who moves into sleep, holding the possibility that the night is a territory with its own form of presence. Not better or worse in any measurable sense. just differently. The holding of the possibility changes something about the quality of the crossing, even when it changes nothing about the destination. The older map is not asking you to believe anything you cannot believe. It is offering a way of moving into the night that the people who built these traditions found more accurate to their experience than the alternative. That the darkness ahead is attended, that the consciousness you are releasing has somewhere real to go, that the night is full in the way that the map has been saying all night, that the night is full. Hold that as lightly as you need to hold it. The way you hold the warmth of a room without gripping it, without analyzing where it comes from, just aware of its presence and the quality of what it provides. The map is complete. The map has been honest with you all night. The night is not empty. It was never empty, and something in the structure of things was arranged within the symbolic imagination of these traditions, so that this particular nightly dissolution, this release of the held and managed self, would happen inside a territory that has been charted and attended and found worth taking seriously by people across many centuries and through conditions much harder than the conditions in which you are hearing this. In the symbolic language of the older map, the map was kept and carried forward so that someone would be here, in the dark, at the end of a long day, and would know that the dark, being full rather than empty, was something worth saying across whatever distance separated then from now. The dark is full. The map says so, and the map has been honest with you all night. This is not a prediction. A prediction requires knowledge of what will happen, and no tradition that has kept its honesty intact across centuries has ever claimed that kind of knowledge about individual lives. What this is different. This is a map, and a map does not tell you where you will go. A map shows you where you are, and where you are is always the most useful information available to a person trying to navigate. Because you cannot navigate from anywhere except the place you are actually standing. The 72 names are, among other things, a map of the territory of human experience, a map of the qualities and conditions and states that people move through in the course of their lives and in the course of a single night. Each name, within the symbolic world of these traditions, corresponds to a region of that territory, a specific quality of what it means to be a person, awake or asleep, whole or in the process of becoming whole, certain or standing in the dark without certainty. The question of which name is most present for you tonight is not a question about assignment, not a question about which presence has been allocated to your particular case by some divine process. It is a question about location, about which region of the map you are currently standing in, about which quality of the territory is most alive in you right now, in this room, in this dark, in this particular condition of a person who has made it to the end of this particular day and is lying still and listening. You do not have to answer out loud. You do not have to be certain. You only have to be willing to be honest about where you are. The map cannot find you if you locate yourself somewhere you are not. So, what did you bring in with you tonight? Not the version you wish you had brought, not the condition you would prefer to be in. What you actually brought. What is actually present in this room right now? In the quality of your tiredness, in the thing your mind keeps returning to, even here, even now, even after everything that has been said. If what you brought in tonight is worry, not the worry attached to a specific problem that has a specific solution, but the background worry, the low and persistent hum of concern that does not attach itself cleanly to one object, but colors everything it touches. Then the older map has a name for where you are. The name is Elimaya, the fourth name of the first group. In the interpretive reading of this tradition, Elimaya points toward the capacity to act in the absence of certainty, to be present in the condition of not knowing without the not knowing becoming unbearable, The older map points here not toward the resolution of the worry tonight, but toward the loosening of the grip that makes the worry feel like it requires your continuous attention in order to remain real. The worry does not need your attention tonight in order to be real tomorrow. It will be real without you. Elimia. Let that name sit somewhere in the room rather than in your hand. Not gripped. Present. The way warmth is present in a room that has been heated through. If what you brought in tonight is the particular tiredness that goes deeper than sleep normally reaches, the tiredness that is in the body, but is also underneath the body, in the layer of a person that carries the long accumulation of everything that was required of them across not just today, but across the months and the years before today. Then the name is Manahel, the fourth name of the eighth group. In the interpretive reading of this tradition, Manahel points toward the capacity to receive what is being given. The specific difficulty this name addresses is not the exhaustion itself. It is the barrier between an exhausted person and the rest that would address the exhaustion. The part of you that keeps going even when there is nothing left to go with. The habit of motion in a person who has been in motion for so long that stillness feels like a failure rather than what it actually is. What you are doing right now is in the territory this name describes. Lying still, not producing anything, not managing anything, not being useful to anyone, allowing something to arrive rather than going out to meet it. Within the symbolic language of this tradition, this is the practice of receiving. A person who can only give cannot be replenished. Manahel. Let the name be an opening rather than an instruction. If what you brought in tonight is grief, whether new or old, whether for a person or a relationship or a version of your life that no longer exists or a version of yourself that did not survive what happened to you, then you are in territory that several names touch simultaneously. Because grief is not a simple territory, and the traditions that built this map knew this, but the name that sits closest to the center of it, in this interpretive reading, is Kavakia, the third name of the eighth group. In the symbolic world of this tradition, Kavakia points toward the movement from living inside the past to carrying the past. The reconciliation this name describes is not the decision to be at peace with what was painful. The traditions are not asking that. They are pointing at the difference between a past that continues to determine every present moment and a past that is present and real and part of who you are without being all of who you are. You do not have to be there yet. The older map does not require you to be there yet. Kavakia, just the name, just the acknowledgement that the people who made this map knew this place. That you are not in unmapped territory, even when it feels exactly like unmapped territory. If what you brought in tonight is the feeling of standing at the edge of something, the particular quality of a person who is between one chapter and another, who can feel that something has ended or is ending and something else has not yet begun, who is in the genuine condition of not yet, neither in what was nor in what will be. Then the name is Sitael, the third name of the first group. In this reading, Sitael points toward the quality of the morning after the night you were not sure you would outlast. The discovery that unsurvivable is a word used before the fact and retired after it. Not the absence of damage, the presence of the person despite the damage. The older map is not promising what the next chapter will contain. It is pointing toward the capacity to enter it, and the fact that you are standing at the edge, aware of it, willing to be in it, without yet knowing what is on the other side, is itself located within the territory this name describes. Sitael. Hold that. If what you brought in tonight is the loneliness that does not come from being without people, but from being in circumstances that do not quite recognize you, from operating in a context that was not built for the version of you that actually exists, from the specific experience of being a particular kind of person in a world that keeps asking you to be slightly different from what you are, then the name is Hawiya, the sixth name of the sixth group. In the symbolic world of this tradition, Hawiya points toward not the resolution of the not belonging, but the quality of remaining, essentially yourself, inside the circumstances that do not honor what you essentially are. The protection of what is essential through the conditions that are working, without meaning to erode it. The older map is not promising the arrival of circumstances that fit. It is pointing toward the quality of protection within the exile itself. Hauya, you are not in unmapped territory. You have never been in unmapped territory. And if what you brought in tonight is something that does not fit neatly into any of these, if what you are carrying is more specific or more complex, or simply more yours than any description from outside can fully capture, then the name has already arrived. It arrived while you were listening. In the moment when something in what was said matched something in what you were feeling, in the name that landed differently than the others, that stayed in the room when the others passed through. You already know which one it is. You knew before the question was asked. And if what you brought in tonight is something rarer and more unexpected, if you arrived here not carrying weight, but something closer to its opposite, a quality of quiet that you did not arrange, a peace that is present without explanation, without you having done anything to earn it or produce it, then, within the symbolic language of these traditions, the name is Kahetel, the eighth name of the first group. In this reading, Kahetel points toward the spontaneous recognition that existence itself is astonishing rather than ordinary, the genuine perception, arriving without arrangement, that the bare fact of being here and being conscious of being here is extraordinary, not the performed appreciation of good things, the actual astonishment. That quality is available to you right now, in the room holding you, in the dark being what it is, in the specific and unrepeatable fact of being you, in this moment, alive and breathing and present. Kahetel, whatever name you are holding, hold it gently, not as a destination, not as a solution, as a location, as the older map's way of saying that where you are has been seen, that the people who made this map considered this place important enough to give it a name and carry that name forward through everything it survived in order to arrive here. In this room, on this night, for you, it arrived. You do not have to do anything with that. Just let the night do the rest. You have a name now, or something in the neighborhood of a name, something that arrived while you were listening and settled into a specific place in you with a specific quality of recognition. Not necessarily the name that was spoken directly. Sometimes it was the quality described around a name, the territory, the texture of what that domain governs. And the name itself was almost secondary to the feeling of being located, of being found in the description. Sometimes what arrived was not a name at all, but a sense of position, a knowing of which part of the map you are standing in, even without precise coordinates. Any of these is enough. The traditions built around the 72 names were not built for precision in the way that most contemporary uses of the word imply. They were built for people, which means they were built for people who are often approximate and uncertain, and who find themselves knowing something at the level of feeling before they can articulate it at the level of language. The name is a direction. The direction is what matters. The direction is more useful than any amount of certainty about exact spelling or exact placement within the system. Hold what you have, not in the way you hold things during the day. During the day, the holding is usually tight and continuous, involving the repeated application of attention and the constant checking to make sure the thing held is still there and still means what it meant when you picked it up. That kind of holding belongs to the day. The night requires a different kind of holding. Hold the name the way a room holds warmth. The room does not grip the warmth. It does not monitor whether the warmth is still present or analyze where it comes from. The warmth is distributed through the space of the room, and the room exists inside it, and the relationship between them requires nothing from either one except presence. The warmth is there. The room is there. That is enough. Let the name be in the room rather than in your hand. There is a practice in some contemplative traditions of using a single word as the center of a sustained attention. Not to think about the word, not to analyze it or follow where it leads, just to let the word be present, to return to it when the mind drifts, which it will, without making the drifting a problem, without treating the return as a correction that implies the drifting was a failure. The word is not a destination that must be continuously held. It is a home base, a place the mind can always return to without effort and without judgment about how far it wandered. The name you are holding tonight is available to you in exactly this way. When the mind moves, as it will, toward the things that were unresolved today, toward the things that will need attention tomorrow, toward the chain of associations that a tired mind follows when it has not yet found its way into sleep. Let the name be the place that is always available to return to, not as a command, not with the quality of effort that would defeat the purpose, with the quality of a hand returning naturally to a warm surface, with the quality of an exhale that is slightly longer than the inhale before it. The name does not require your belief. This is worth saying clearly, because the traditions that produced these names existed inside frameworks of belief that required a great deal from the people who lived inside them. And you are most likely not one of those people in the full sense. You are a person at the end of a day, in the dark, having listened to something that may or may not correspond to what you hold to be true about the structure of existence. The name does not ask you to have resolved that. It only asks for the quality of openness that is not belief and not disbelief, but simply the absence of the active resistance that would prevent anything from arriving. The willingness to let something be here without immediately submitting it to the evaluation that would determine whether it deserves to be here. Most of what has genuinely helped you in your life arrived in that quality of openness. Not in the moments when you were certain, in the moments when you were tired enough or present enough to let something in that the defended and managed daytime self would have evaluated away before it reached you. You are that tired tonight. You are that present. There is something specific about what happens to a name when it is held in the dark rather than examined in the light. In the light, a name is an object of analysis. It has a meaning that can be checked, a tradition that can be verified, an interpretation that can be questioned. In the dark, held loosely in the condition you are in right now, a name becomes something different, more like a quality than a word, more like the texture of a place than the label on a sign, more like something you are inside than something you are looking at from outside. That is the condition these names were built for, not examination. Inhabitation. There is nothing else required of you between now and sleep. No task that benefits from your continued wakefulness. No version of the future that becomes safer or more manageable by your remaining in it tonight, rather than releasing your grip on it and letting the night carry you somewhere the waking mind cannot follow. The day is done with you. You have been done with it for longer than you may have realized. Since, somewhere back in the movement through the names, when something in you that had been held up by the momentum of the day finally stopped needing the momentum to hold it up and settled, quietly, without announcement, into the condition the night was always waiting to offer you. The name is in the room. Something much older than the name is in the room. Let the name be the last articulate thing, not the last thought. Thoughts will come and go in the territory ahead without requiring your management of them. The last thing that has the quality of intention behind it, the last direction set before the navigation, hands itself over to something that does not need directions and has been doing this work. In the symbolic imagination of these traditions, for as long as there have been people in rooms in the dark at the end of days that ask too much of them, point yourself toward the name, and then let the pointing go. The night knows the rest of the way. The tree of life moves in two directions simultaneously. Upward from the world of physical things toward the source at the crown. Downward from the source into the increasing density of formed existence. Both directions are real. Both are always happening. Within the symbolic world of these traditions, Neither direction is privileged over the other. The map describes both, because both are part of what the map is describing. But tonight moves in one direction, the direction of descent. In the symbolic language of these traditions, descent is not a fall. It is not the movement of something pure into something compromised. It is not the loss of altitude in the way that altitude implies value. Descent in this symbolic world is the movement of what is most essential into the forms through which it becomes real. The movement of light into the specific textures and temperatures and colors of the things that light falls on. The movement of source into expression. The movement of what is possible into what is. You are descending now. Not because something has gone wrong, because this is what the night is for. Because within the symbolic world of these traditions, the tree of life does not stop at the world you are lying in and wait. It moves through you, through the sleeping body, through the levels of what you are, that the waking mind spends its days managing and tonight has finally released. The first center below full waking consciousness. In the geography of the tree, as some of these traditions map it, is called Yesod. Its name means foundation. In some readings within these streams, Yesod corresponds to dreams and the unconscious levels of experience, the level just above the fully physical world where the images and symbols that appear in sleep have their origin, the level where the experiences of the day are received and integrated, and the parts of them that carry meaning are separated from the parts that are simply noise. You are moving into the territory of Yesod now, not as a location you are traveling to, but as a quality of awareness you are settling into. The awareness that is softer than waking, more present than deep sleep. The awareness that perceives in images rather than arguments. That knows in feeling rather than conclusion. That is native to the dark, in a way the daytime self never quite achieves. Let the images come if they want to come, not the thoughts. The images. The thoughts belong to the level above this one. The level of management and organization and making sense. The images belong here. The faces of people you love appearing without context. The rooms from years ago suddenly present with a completeness of detail that waking memory could not reproduce. The landscapes that correspond to no place you have been and feel more familiar than anywhere you have. The fragments of something that is not quite story and not quite sensation, but holds the quality of both. Let them move through without following them back toward wakefulness. The current moves below the surface, and the surface can remain still while the moving happens beneath it. Below Yesod, in the tree. Within this symbolic geography is Malkuth, the world, the physical world, the world of the body and the breath and the weight of what is covering you and the specific temperature of the room and the sound of whatever sound the night is making. Malkuth is where you live during the day. It is the ground level of everything, the place where what exists in the higher levels finally takes on the full density of the real, and Malkuth is also, within the symbolic world of these traditions, the world of rest, not because the physical is simpler than the other levels, not because the body is less than the other aspects of what a person is, but because the body knows something that the other aspects of a person spend most of their time trying to remember. The body knows that it is held. The body does not need to be convinced of this. It feels the ground beneath the floor. It feels the surface beneath itself. It knows, at the level below argument, that the support is present and has always been present and does not require anything from the body in order to continue being present. Your body knows this right now. It has known it since you lay down. Everything else has been gradually catching up to what the body already knew. The 72 names are present in the quality of this descent, not as a list being recited, not as information being processed, as the quality of the night itself, which has been described tonight as attended and mapped, and part of a territory that people across many centuries took seriously enough to chart carefully and carry forward so that someone in exactly your condition would have something to hold in the dark. The descent is not into nothing. It is into the country that is on the other side of the threshold, the country that the 10th group governs in their silence, the country that every person who has ever lived has entered every night of their lives without knowing its name or its geography, the country that the traditions built around the 72 names have been pointing toward all night, with every name and every territory and every moment of the map that acknowledged what is difficult alongside what is beautiful. The name you are holding is dissolving at its edges, not disappearing, changing form, moving from something you are holding to something you are in, from a direction you are facing to the air around you that you are breathing. The grip has become contact. The contact is becoming presence. The presence is becoming the quality of the night itself, which surrounds you and has been surrounding you since you lay down and requires nothing from you except your willingness to be surrounded by it. In the symbolic language of these traditions, something is present in this descent. In the symbolic language of these traditions, something has always been present in this descent, not watching in the way that surveillance watches, attending in the way that the oldest meanings of the word watcher implied, present, accompanying, there in the quality of the crossing rather than as a separate presence observing the crossing from outside it. All 72 are somewhere in the geography of this night, not all visible, not all close, but all present within the symbolic world of these traditions. The way all stars are present on a clear night, even when you are attending to only a few of them. The ones you cannot see are not gone. They are in the part of the sky that is not currently overhead. The crown of the tree, the center called Kether, is described in these traditions as a point so close to the source of everything that it is barely distinguishable from the source itself. The first movement from pure being toward the first hint of form, so far above the level of ordinary human experience that most of the traditions treat it as unreachable by ordinary means. But in some streams of thought within these traditions, something of what a person is moves during sleep toward the higher levels of the tree, in the way that consciousness moves when it is no longer required to maintain the specific shape of a specific person in specific circumstances. Not all the way to Kether. The older map does not claim that, but closer, within this symbolic world, to the source than the day allows, closer to what the 72 names are, all, in their different ways, pointing toward the thing that was present before the names, the thing that will be present when the names are gone. The breath moves in, slower than it was at the beginning of this. The breath moves out. The room is very still, not the stillness of emptiness, the stillness of something full that has no reason to move and every reason to remain exactly as it is. The name is here. The night is here. If the older map could speak in its own language, it would say, something was here before you arrived in this room. Something will be here after you leave it. Something is here now. In this room, at this hour, in the dark. For you, you do not have to stay awake to be held. You have never had to stay awake to be held. The traditions carried that knowledge across all the distance between then and now, across all the languages and all the rooms and all the nights in all the centuries of people who needed to know that the dark is not empty before they could let themselves go into it. The dark is not empty. The last name softens. The last edge of the day releases its hold. And somewhere in the country that the map has been pointing toward all night, in the territory that has no name in any language and does not need one, you are already home.